Because looking at us both, honestly, you know that's all we have. The mental muscle.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Gutt Nation.
All right, folks.
For president.
In the first half, if you missed it, we basically looked at this climate change problem, and we tried to look at it from a historical perspective. Okay, now I'm going to foray into a dangerous area, the area of science. Okay, which is a little bit out of my realm, but I'm an educated person, and I've done some research, so we'll see how I do. In science class, we learn about the scientific method. In essence, these are the rules you have to follow when researching a problem. Okay? You have to have data that maintains its integrity. You have to make sure that the data is representative. You have to control for other possible causes of the results. And then once you publish it, it is subject to peer review where other scientists examine the work to ensure that there are no errors. When I said I'm going to look at science, though, I'm going to go back into history, and I want to go back into Stalin's Russia, which, of course, you're going to know that I know stuff about. And I want to talk about how politics can take science and mold it for its own purposes. Of course, in the Soviet Union under Stalin, scientific progress halted for roughly 3 decades, largely as a result of the rise of this scientist named Trifon Lysenko. It's a written test. I know I said his last name right. In the 1950s, genetics, the science of genetics, okay, came into the forefront here with the identification of DNA, and then when James Watson and Francis Crick, okay, of course, put forth the idea of the double helix. Okay? But in the USSR, Soviet citizens could not believe that genes existed. In the 1930s, the scientist Lysenko rose to prominence. Why did Lysenko rise to prominence? Because the agricultural system in the Soviet Union was dying, and you kids that are taking AP Euro this year and kids that have taken it in the past know that when the communists came to power, they imposed collectivization on agriculture. The government can't do anything right. The government can't run anything. And this collectivization of agriculture failed. Of course, the left followed a familiar pattern, a pattern I believe we see today, where they identified troublemakers, which they called them kulaks. These kulaks were demonized. And once these kulaks were demonized, their land was seized. But of course, when the government implemented their vision, this utopian vision of collectivization, surprise, agricultural yields failed. Now, of course, Stalin needed a miracle, and he turned to science. And Lysenko promised him a miracle. Okay? Basically, folks, what he was basically trying to say is that he had a new way to increase agricultural production based on an Lamarckian view.
3 minutes.
I'll comment more in a bit.
Do you want to just say your point about how that craziness is part of science today? Just real quick. I'll give you 10 seconds.
Yeah, the acquired traits are passed to the offspring. So basically, people, he promised Stalin that he could increase agricultural production based on this faulty science, which became gospel in the Soviet Union. Just like today, okay, where anyone that disagrees about climate change is basically, what I want to say, a pariah. They're not taken seriously.
All right. So that was a fascinating history lesson. I'm not exactly sure how that affects science today. But, you know, to look back at history and agriculture, which I don't even really fully understand why we're talking about that, you know, there's a tremendous amount of science that went into the Green Revolution in Mexico, where we actually used genetic modification and the science behind that to turn Mexico into, instead of an importer of wheat, to a massive exporter of wheat that became a driving force of their economy, and then that followed suit around the world. Science rocks. Okay, and as far as the peer-reviewed stuff